Welcome to the Whiskey Congress. Honest, open talk dedicated to speaking the truth to those who are open to hearing it. Black, white, right, left. Most importantly, honest, bold, and fueled by good whiskey. In Whiskey Veritas, we are Whiskey Congress. Join the evolution.
Welcome to 2025. Whiskey Congress is back in session. Stephen and I are together in the Cleveland studio.
Yeah,
for the first time in a long time, man. I missed you.
Yeah, you know, you had the end of the year, the holidays. I got sick with that Cleveland crap that was going around.
It took me down pretty good too.
And then I tried to bounce back a little too soon from it and made a bad situation worse. And I think too, I had mentioned to you I was getting just a little burnt out. I think a lot burnt out, not only from the show, but just, everything I have going on. We're trying to, get our company off the ground and move that in the right direction. It had me traveling a lot, making a lot of heavy decisions, dealing with the financial aspect of it, dealing with the fact that I've got a giant robot in another state. Moving housing development deals, like it was just a lot. And I think I started to burn out. And then it felt like every conversation that we were having around the show was just constantly Trump. And I think the fatigue of constantly talking about the election and Trump and Musk, I just kind of got to a point where I was like, I need to step away from all of it, really. So I kind of shut myself down a little bit. From a lot of work, social, just to kind of reset and figure out if I was going to hit it full force or go on a rampage. And
maybe go to Peru, do some ayahuasca, hang out with Aaron Rodgers?
I mean, no. You had me until you said Aaron, and then it was like, well, fuck. He's just such a pretentious
douche.
Yeah, but anyway. But yeah, and so I just, but now, I feel pretty recharged. Recharged.
Yeah, recharged.
I feel good. Mind is in a good place, better place. Physically, back to full strength. So, good.
Good.
Feel good. How about you?
I survived the holidays. No real serious family drama. My pasta dinner was a roaring success, which is a big deal to me.
I smoked a lot of meat on New Year's.
What'd you smoke?
Took the smoker up to Marblehead with some friends and family, and I did a bunch. I did like 4 chuck roasts,
all right,
and a pork shoulder, and then got the chuck roast, smoked the chuck roast for a few hours, and then moved them into a roaster pan with some beef broth and onions and some other stuff, and then put it back on the smoker. Now, a lot of people will go, blah, 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 blah. You could have put it in the oven, but I already have the smoker going, and the shoulders weren't going in the oven. The shoulders, so I don't wrap my shoulders. A lot of people pull them out, and they wrap them either in foil or butcher paper, but I just let them go, right? Keep the temperature steady at 230, and just let them go. And I tell you what, those things were juicy, just fell apart. Like I could barely get them off the smoker. And that's probably the one plus side of wrapping them is that you can just take them off in one piece because these things literally, they fell apart. Like when I was bringing them off the smoker and putting them into the pan. And but food was good. Got plenty of protein. So, but no, food was good.
There was a bowl. Do you know Kinder?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So their bowl
Kinder
game.
Rub. Yeah, rub. They got some really good rubs.
I'm totally jumping off the tracks here, but they hosted a bowl game, and they were showing what I think were beef ribs.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, you see that?
Well, because the crew I was up there with, they're like, "Did you bring any of those? Like, did I bring enough beef ribs
prime ribs
for fucking 30 people?" No, I did not. I'm sorry. I didn't have an extra $1,000 in my pocket.
Right.
But there was a smoker that they had there that I think they had specially made. I don't know if you saw it, but it had the double cabinet doors with the rotating thing through. And I was like, anybody next year for Christmas, if you're looking for something for me, go get me that smoker.
If my retirement plan comes through and I win either the Powerball or the Mega Millions, you will have that smoker.
Okay. Well, deal.
All right. Anyway, it's good to see you, brother.
Yeah, same.
It's been a long time.
New Year gets off to a brutal start. with the attack down in New Orleans on Bourbon Street. No other way to describe it other than a terrorist attack. I think, X, Twitter is such a cesspool now. But, because people were complaining because they weren't calling it a terrorist attack instantly, right? And I think what happened was they needed to figure out who the attacker was. They needed to figure out what the attacker's connections were to figure out exactly what this was. Now, if you want to just say broadly, anyone who plows a truck into a crowd of people and just gets their gun out and starts shooting people, it doesn't matter what their cause is, it's terrorism. Okay, sure. Fine. But I think in the U.S., we associate certain elements beyond that to terrorism. And I think before they got technical with it, they just wanted to make sure, this just wasn't some dude who just kind of lost his shit. And because if it's not like...
It happened in Wisconsin a couple years ago when some guy just drove into a Christmas parade.
Yeah,
and you're like, awful thing, but it's just some fucking whack job who lost it. And
are we getting into semantics and wordplay? Yes, a little bit. But in the end, they come out and say, look, we're investigating this as terrorism. And, there was a lot of sort of, as with a lot of these stories, a lot of misinformation and less than accurate information, and then information that wasn't all put into context together. So the attacker, Shamsud bin
Jabbar,
he had another middle name, but he. So the original story was that he had crossed the border a couple days ago through Eagle Pass, and then he rented this electric Ford truck from Toro, which is kind of like where you can rent really nice cars. It's like Airbnb or Vrbo, but for cars.
All right.
And he rents it through there, and then he drives it from Texas to Louisiana, and then takes, and then
kills 15 people.
Right. And so immediately it goes to, we got to lock down the border, and this is Biden's fault because illegal immigration, blah, 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 blah. If he was, and then, his name comes out, and they're just like, and he crossed illegally through the border. No, dude was an American citizen.
Yep.
Raised
Army veteran.
Yeah. Raised in the U.S., Army veteran, 10 years in the Army and reserves combined, seemed like a normal sort of family man. And then sometime around the election, maybe a little bit before, kind of starts to close himself off, and then gets radicalized, and then this happens.
Right.
And I've seen, I'm in a couple different text chains and groups with some guys that served that I went to West Point with, and a lot of them kind of made the same point, right? Like this dude, the specific path that he took while being stationed and his specific assignments, he wasn't the only one that came out of that different and radicalized, right? In different ways, right? And they weren't saying that everyone who went this specific path, got turned sideways, but it did a number on a number of different people, right? Okay. And that it's apparently in the military that this is like a poorly kept secret. But there's two lines of conversation, right? Like this is a homegrown terrorist with military, who's trained with American military tactics, but then gets radicalized and attacks his own country. That's one story. But then the other story is how conservative media is trying to tell this story, right? And they're not helping. They're making a bad situation worse across the board, whether it's just talking about the attack specifically and the just senseless loss of life, but then they're doing no favors for the body politic on how they are trying to spin this story for the MAGA narrative.
So first of all, this really kind of later shook me up because I initially saw the story and I saw, truck driven down Bourbon Street in New Orleans kills 10 people. And I didn't even click the headline. I'm like, I'll look at this later, but I've become so desensitized to mass attacks that I'm actually starting to like think I need to reconsider a lot of things. Like 50, and it ends up being 15 people killed, a whole bunch more injured. You were in New Orleans not long ago. I should have been there with you, but my fucking flight got screwed up. I was there in 1993. I still have vivid memories of Bourbon Street, and the thought of a truck barreling down that street is horrifying. I mean, it's a pedestrian street. So
and I mean, there's a couple things, right? Like, so you've got obviously Bourbon Street, but then there's other sort of feeder streets
Canal and Decatur and
come off and there's people are trying to make a big deal about the what are they called?
Lack of security of the barricades.
Like the barricades, and like because when I was there, they weren't up, right? But I guess that they've got these sort of like metal barricades that they can raise or lower depending, and they were complaining that they weren't up. And
Bourbon Street's a pedestrian street. You don't think of it needing to be defended.
Yeah, I mean, people are like, why wouldn't you have them up? And they were up for this event, but people listed events where they weren't up. So they're trying to make it a conspiracy, like someone in the government knew that this was going to happen, and so they didn't have the barricades and the barriers up. I having been to New Orleans and kind of seen how they operate, like I think it's I don't know if there's a method to the madness there, and I don't even. It's not even worth kind of going down the conspiracy road just yet, right? I think you got to dig in, figure out exactly who the attacker was, right? And we've got a pretty good background on him from his military record.
But also, did he have accomplices? I mean, that's what we looked at now.
Yeah, and because there were, they found improvised explosive devices in the truck, and there were some, I guess, found around maybe the Superdome or near the Superdome. So, they had to sweep for security. So figuring out if there was anybody else involved, figuring out how he got radicalized, if it wasn't while he was serving, did it happen, did he spend too much time on YouTube? Who knows? But I think there's a lot of questions that are still out there, and it's just unfortunate when you go and you look at some of these social media sites, how it's being spun, and then you've got really sort of low vibrating people who are just kind of running with whatever they see on X, literally,
Or Fox. I think Fox was reporting that it was someone who crossed the border also.
I would argue that Fox is getting a lot of their talking points from conservative talking heads on X or Twitter, right?
I'm not going to argue with you for a second, but what does that say about the state of media and Fox News?
Well, it's in a bad spot, and it's not only Fox, right? But
no, it's not.
But Fox is they're proud, right, of just how bullshit they are to an extent, right? Like, they basically are waving the flag in your face, like we don't care about
Right. Well, and then they'll go, "Whoa, we're fair and balanced." But I actually heard exactly what you described. So I was at my Irish pub down the street, and a friend who's not a MAGA guy at all was like, "Yeah, I heard the guy crossed the border," and I, like I said, I was desensitized. I didn't actually read the article, and I said to him, I haven't seen anything, so I did what I'm going to pat myself on the back for and did the right thing and didn't respond to what he was telling me. Just said, I don't know the details. And then I found out, okay, everything that guy told me was wrong. I'm not saying he was lying. He was just believing what was spooned to him.
Yeah.
But
people don't read, and the problem is now, even if you do read, right, and you go and cross-check multiple sources and kind of find your sort of connecting facts, right? Facts that are, or your consistent facts throughout multiple different sources on the same topic. People will still
right.
Like there are literally people who say, I don't follow any mainstream media, no TV, no outlets. No. Like I know
plenty of them.
There are plenty of people who literally will tell you they only get their information from X or Twitter. That's it. That is the only place where I get my news.
Yep.
And that's a whole separate conversation that you could probably go down into.
You're opening the door for me to talk about the Aaron Rodgers thing.
Well, no, please. Let's just talk about serious adults and not buffoons. But
Pat McAfee was involved too. So.
Okay, but to that point, there's a whole conversation about Elon Musk and why he actually purchased Twitter and what his intentions are with it, and this is part of it. He makes this claim about free speech and everything else, which I'm like, people, private company, free speech applies to the government, right? I mean, and then you look at how people who say things that Elon doesn't like, he removes them, literally deletes them from the app.
So he bought this because he wanted a free, open conversation, and then
he didn't.
He
bought it for control. He bought it because he saw how powerful it was. He wanted to control it. He could afford it, so he did, and now he has the ability to control and manipulate through this platform, and he does it kind of masterfully. Even though you could see it in plain sight, he knows that a majority of the people who buy into it, who are on the app, who use it, they bought it hook, line, and sinker. So it doesn't matter how much you call him out for it. He's just going to point, right, and just like, but they're doing exactly what I want them to do.
Right.
And they no longer trust. They don't. Not only do they not trust CNN or MSNBC, they don't trust Fox News. They only are relying on me and my app and my platform. And when I get on there, I shift the algorithm and I control the narrative, right? Simply by doing dumb shit like changing his stupid name, right? To Kikius Maximus, right? And then trying to manipulate various meme coins and sending out these sort of subliminal messages and subtext and all this other stuff. And he's toying with it, but essentially he's just telling you, like, look, this is how much power I have just by taking over this app. And it's
he's not wrong.
He's not.
And here's the thing: we talked about this back when it happened, and we talked about the ridiculous X logo and how stupid it looked, and how no one even calls Twitter X because everyone knows it as Twitter. Excuse me, but he, crazy like a fox, spends $40-some billion on this, and at the time we were like, "What is this idiot doing?" And yeah, he was a step ahead of me.
I never said that he was an idiot. And
I don't think I did either. But
I didn't say he was an idiot. I didn't like it because my fear is that this is what would happen, right? Because he kept touting how, it's all about free speech, and then he exposed everything that Twitter was doing behind the scenes and getting, taking suggestions from the government and all this other stuff, which was, just, again, cannon fodder for the conservative media, right? Because, and listen, Twitter was a bad actor, right? They were far left-leaning. They weren't objective. They kept their, thumb on the scale when it came to political issues and Trump and conservative issues and everything else. You can't deny it. They did it. He exposes it, right, and then gets everybody. So see, see what they did to us. See what they did to us, right. And then he's just like, oh yeah, I'm all about free speech. I just exposed the truth, right. But then now the things get a little contentious for him. He starts to put his thumb on the scale as he feels fit, right. And literally, like he demonetizes and demotes Laura Loomer because she came out and attacked him on this whole immigration thing that we'll jump into here in a second. Other people, conservatives who came out against him on that side. So it's just interesting how he manipulates it. But before we jump, we had another incident in Vegas outside the Trump Hotel where a cybertruck basically explodes. Initially, people were saying that it was the battery, and people who hate the Cybertruck like me were like, yay, because we hate the Cybertruck because Elon Musk, whatever. Which, again, for all of you who don't know, like, I don't necessarily hate Elon Musk for any of his political views. I hate him because of the Cybertruck.
You hate him because you stayed up
to watch
the launch of the Cybertruck.
I was so excited about this Cybertruck, and I was, literally was amped to put in my reservation to purchase one.
That deserves to be called out here because it wasn't like you were anti-EV. You actually are pro-EV.
No, I'm very pro-EV because I'm a guy who has driven a truck for most of his life. And I'm like, man, if you give me my same rugged styling of the truck that I have now, but you make it EV where I don't have to stop at a gas station every time I fucking pass one, that's the best of both worlds. Yes, let's do this. And then and not to mention there were renderings of what this truck was going to look like that got you very excited if you were a true truck guy. And then he comes out with this fucking monstrosity of a design. And I've never been so angry at something so superficial and ridiculous in my life. And that is saying a lot because I get really mad at a lot of shit. And that,
and
like,
these are blowing up my phone at 12:05.
Yeah, I did.
Furious.
Like your phone and a lot of people's phones. I threw my phone. It was not good. So anyway, that's why I hate cybertrucks and Elon Musk.
What's funny is I knew I could bring up that topic if I would have taken the headphones off, walked out of the room,
Right.
cooked a turkey, I'd come back and you'd still be.
The only reason I'm changing back to the original topic is because you're sitting there still, actually. But the Cybertruck blows up, and so initially people who hate Cybertrucks like me, and we just discussed why, because if you watch the video, there seems to be some sort of like gas emanating from the wheel wells, right?
This is outside Trump's hotel, just off the strip in Vegas, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Not wholly sure why that matters, but it's in Vegas. Yeah, it does because of the location, proximity, and people dying. But the only person that died was the driver who was in the truck, who we're not sure who that was at this time, but we know. So the EV, which is interesting, right? So the attack in New Orleans was a Ford F-150 Lightning, which is an EV truck.
Didn't put those together until just now.
This truck was a Cybertruck, which is obviously an electric vehicle, and it was also rented on the same Toro app that the F-150 was rented on. Jabbar, the alleged attacker in New Orleans, was former Army.
Yeah.
And our person who rented this truck, who is also dead, Army confirmed that Matthew Allen Livelsberger is dead, but they haven't confirmed how. And we know the driver of the truck is deceased. They died in the explosion.
But has not been identified.
But this Matthew Allen Livelsberger was U.S. Army Special Forces Green Beret, who was deployed but was on leave, approved leave, and he rented the truck that blew up and killed maybe himself or someone else. Allegedly, we know someone's dead. We just don't know who it is. But we also know that he's dead, but we don't know how he died. And we know that the truck that he rented, the Cybertruck, blew up in front of the Trump Hotel, filled with some pretty, intense fireworks, but then also going back to the gas that we saw emanating from the wheel wells. If you've ever seen an EV battery in one of these things explode, like typically there's this gas, but you can't say typically because they all explode differently when they go, but because I've watched a couple of these. Now, you're the fucking chemical engineer. Jump in on how these
honestly,
batteries explode.
I do have a friend who,
Nerd.
I do have a friend who's literally like a PhD in battery technology.
Okay, well, he's not here. So I'm gonna play the role of fucking PhD electrical chemical engineer, even though we've got one sitting right here.
I don't have a PhD, but I am a chemical engineer.
But so you see this gas emanating from it, and I've seen that before with these sort of
explosions
with these type of what are the batteries called?
Lithium batteries?
Yes, these lithium-ion batteries, when they go, right, the gas comes first and then the boom comes. Well, we saw the gas coming out from the wheel wells, from every wheel well, right? Now, assuming that this was a Cybertruck that had multiple batteries, then it seems like something was going on that had sort of triggered this chemical reaction that led to the explosion. But we don't know that, right? Like, we don't know if it was a EV battery explosion, if something had happened that caused the batteries to explode.
Or if there's an accelerant put in the vehicle, which is what I would bet on, to be honest with you.
And it's also, like, and people are just like, oh, well, the fireworks were there to make it bigger. It's very hard to, in all of this, what it gets us to is that, was this a terrorist attack, right? Because we can make a couple connections. 2 military guys, 2 rented trucks, same apps, both EV vehicles. The argument is that you use the EV vehicle for the bigger explosion. Once it does explode, take out more people. I don't know. And then you've got the really bizarre circumstances of what happened out in front of Trump's hotel. Is this an accident? Seems like hard for it to be an accident. But we do know that some of these batteries are kind of unstable. There have been instances of some of Tesla vehicles specific having issues, right? And so this one explodes. what's the cause? We don't know. So Vegas, we don't know if it was a terrorist attack. People, it's almost like people want it to be, but I think they're using it because they want it. People who don't like the Cybertruck and don't like Elon Musk want this to be an issue with the Cybertruck, right? People who like Elon Musk, right, want this to be a terrorist attack. All of us are terrible people, right? At the end, right? Like, I mean, it's just like, oh, well, like, friendly reminder, a guy died, right? We don't know if he was a bad actor or not, right? We don't know if he was this Matthew Allen Livelsberger or not. But someone did die in this, so that's awful. But the reason behind it could be either faulty issue with the Cybertruck, sabotage of the Cybertruck, because they just wanted to sabotage and maybe take out this military guy. I don't know, right? Or something else where they wanted a bigger explosion to take out people in Vegas, or a terrorist attack on a Trump property. I don't know, but a lot of speculation there.
Well, I saw a Cybertruck at a nearby bar restaurant a couple of days ago, and I was like,
vomit?
I did not.
You should have. Right on the windshield.
It was driving away as I showed up, so I really couldn't.
You're not dedicated.
I'm not nearly as passionate on this issue as you are. Either is anyone I know, but I do know you stayed up that late to see this thing that was exciting, and
they infuriate me when I see them on the road.
I
end
am
up
aware.
seeing more of them, which pisses me off more.
I agree. We need Steve on a road rage moment because he sees this monstrosity. They're fucking weird looking. It was fun for me to kind of look at it and go, okay, that's
stupid.
It's just weird. I'm not as anti as you are, but it is odd to me that that's becoming part of the narrative when Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are becoming so prevalent in the government. And oh, by the way, the definition of oligarch is basically really influential rich person who is not elected to office. Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk fit that bill. They just do. I mean,
You don't like that's. Listen, oligarch, very wealthy person that influences, that has
Without election,
undue influence on government stuff, right? And they haven't been elected.
Right.
Neither one was elected. Vivek at least ran.
Right.
Elon can't, right? So this is how they get access to the government. There's a fuck ton, right, of conflict of interest with Elon Musk and his government contracts, and yet they're there with the Department of Government Efficiency,
right.
DOGE, right?
Right.
And they got themselves into a little bit of a bluster with the MAGA crowd with their views on immigration, right?
Right.
They both come out and say, like, look, we need really smart immigrants to come in for engineering and STEM because they're way better than Americans at doing this. They're more disciplined and, frankly, they're more affordable, right? And MAGA lost their mind. And I went directly to multiple left-leaning black influencers who were jumping in on this, and I was like, shut your mouth. Stay out of it, right? This is like, look.
Is this let them eat themselves? Or?
This is absolutely let them eat themselves,
okay.
Right? Because here's the deal, right? For black Americans, this ain't our fight at all. Because look, either way, they ain't hiring us. Right, all these companies are getting rid of DEI, and there's a lot of people who were in C-suite, right? But they were in C-suite because they were the, vice president of DEI or whatever that nonsense was, and they lost their job. And I was never a DEI guy because this is why, right? Because it's just like, look, you are one election away from getting all that shit wiped out, right? So you better go find a hard skill that is very valuable and either start your own company and use collective resources to build up, or go find a very hard skill, get a degree that's worth something, and get yourself into these positions, because having, being the vice president of DEI is not going to be the way to go if you get the wrong people in office. We have the wrong people in office, and guess what? Although, there's a laundry list of companies that got rid of their whole DEI departments, right? So my whole thing was like, look, y'all need to stay the fuck out of this one and let them eat themselves. Why would we want to settle this, right? Because either way, they're not going to hire us. Whoever comes out on top, they're still not going to be hiring black people for these jobs, right? Like, so we have way bigger fish to fry than them arguing whether we should, over the type of immigrants that they don't want to let in, right?
Well, I hear what you're saying. Now, I will say in this particular case, it's funny because Vivek is an American citizen, actually went to high school in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Oh, that's weird. I thought you were about to say something more profound. Like,
no,
you went to high school with him.
No. Well, I've been on it. He went to St. Xavier in Cincinnati. I actually went to their campus, and by the way, their high school campus is a fucking college campus. It's insane. Xavier in Cincinnati, yeah.
Yeah, it's not St. Xavier.
Okay, sorry.
I mean, I'm sorry.
Right.
You're here. Get it right.
I don't care. But anyway, he's an
They got some pretty powerful alumni. I suggest they
lick my balls. I don't like that whole shit. Anyway, but so if Musk and Vivek are going to be power players in the government and they're going to fly afoul of MAGA, I will be very curious to see how this plays out because frankly, I don't think it'll matter because they ultimately have their spats and then they come back together. Do you think this has any chance of any traction that puts a wedge between them and the MAGA crowd? Well, I don't.
I think it depends, right? I think it depends a lot. Less about Vivek. No one really cares about Vivek, right? Like Vivek was kind of a fire starter with this conversation, but Elon is more interesting. Elon is new to this conservative MAGA shit, and we know why he did it. He did it for this reason, to get access to the government. 100%. Elon doesn't care one way or another. He's probably more progressive and more liberal. Just look at how he's kind of built out these companies, what he built them out for. He's very self-centered, right, and narcissistic and everything else, but I don't think Elon is truly this conservative flag. He's not.
Either is Trump, by the way.
Yeah, but Trump has to be.
Yeah.
Right?
No, Trump is rebranded.
Trump is like he's trying to keep himself out of jail. He's his fortune is kind of like he's worth a few $1 billion, but it's a paper house of cards, whatever. Elon is entrenched as a very, very wealthy man and has these ridiculous aspirations on basically being Cobra Commander, in my theory, right? I think Elon knew he needed access to the government. He did the analysis and tried to figure out, all right, who is more likely to win this election? Whoever is more likely to win, then that's who I'm going to start to suck the ass of to get in with them, right? He came out and said, it's probably going to be Trump. So he starts to migrate towards Trump. And now he knew, right? He's like, Trump is easy. All I got to do is play to this guy's ego, right? And I'm rich as fuck. Yes, this is an easy one for me to do. So he does it. And now that he's got it, he doesn't need Trump. He doesn't need MAGA. He doesn't need any of it. He can do whatever the fuck he wants to do. So if he wants to promote the importation of white Europeans, right, that are more apt at doing the stuff that he needs them to do from programming and design and everything else, he's going to go with that. That's pissing MAGA off because MAGA's
I think MAGA's more upset about the Indians and the other Asians.
If you dig into it, MAGA's pissed at it in general because they're like, America first, right? Fuck the Europeans. Why aren't you taking because all of these white parents are saying, well, my kid went to such and such university and he had a 4.0 and he didn't get a job because they gave it to a black person. Bullshit. Show me the black person that got this job that your son didn't get. Get the fuck out of here, Mary Sue. Right? But now I do believe that your son may have lost a job to a Middle Eastern person or to an Asian person or to an Indian or something along those lines. Right? So to your point, yes, right? Like that's who they're, but their point is, I don't care if they're from Europe. I don't care if they're from India, Southeast Asia, wherever. There's plenty of kids in the United States that are graduating from college, graduating with degrees, that
with
allegedly, according to all their parents on X, can't find jobs, which I also find to be bullshit because the numbers coming out of the university and the obnoxious kids just walking around Case Western Reserve's campus, right, tend to lead you a different direction. But I'm just saying that when it comes to MAGA, right, in their anger at Elon Musk, I think it's very real because he's literally saying, America first, in most cases, unless it comes to, the brain power that I need for my business, and then I'm going to get it from wherever I want, and I think it probably needs to come from outside the U.S. That can be a very deep-cutting issue in the MAGA world, and I think it has shown a split. Now, could they come back together? Sure. But if Elon continues to just do what he wants to do as he sees fit for the shit that he needs, then I think that divide continues to grow over time, and people are like, "What the fuck?" And Trump is not gonna really push back against Elon. He can't.
All right.
He's too indebted to him.
People get mad
to the tune of what?
And well, whatever the money is, but also what does Elon have in his back pocket in terms of information, whatever.
I don't know.
No,
you're saying you don't know.
I'm saying no one does.
I mean,
some people do, but not us.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, I'm curious. Like, does Elon just have? Because the money he gave to his campaign, that's spent.
Yeah.
I mean, you throw the money at the stripper's got your money.
Yes.
A stripper reference in there. That was fun. But what further influence does Trump hold over Elon? Does Elon have something to say, oh, by the way, all this money I gave you for your campaign was dirty. All this whatever was dirty. I found the Russian P tape. Who the fuck knows?
I don't even think it has to be that, to be honest. It's just, I think Elon could easily flip his allegiance another direction.
And
right?
would it matter at this point?
Well, I don't think people would be like, oh, Elon Musk, yay, he switched to our side. But if Elon Musk starts pumping money into the DNC,
that's okay.
It doesn't matter whether you agree with him or not. Like the DNC is not going to take his money. Oh, and then if they could outspend him, right? Like now, the DNC, like they spent a lot of money, and you could argue
they could fuck up a 2-car funeral,
right? I mean, they spent a lot of money, and they didn't spend it great, and they're not in office.
Right.
So, but if Elon Musk says, "I'm going to quadruple the amount of money that you have to spend," people are going to spend it, and if that gets them elected, then it doesn't matter what people think about it, right?
All right. I mean, look, money influences politics. This just in, I get you, but. It's going to be curious to play out because Elon Musk, look, the guy has Asperger's disease. People get mad at me when I say that sometimes. I'm like, well, my source is Elon Musk. So I'm not casting aspersions. I'm quoting him.
Right, and their thought process is different, right? Like he's very much on the spectrum. And, I mean, I think you've seen it manifest live in some of the different conversations that he's had, the way that he talks and interacts with people. People say he's a ketamine addict, and I don't like to get into that sort of stuff. If I haven't seen you rip lines of Adderall or ketamine or whatever, then I can't necessarily accuse you, and I don't want to. That's not right. But all that being said, he just hums at a different vibration. And I think he's going to do what he wants to do, and it will be interesting to see how much it alienates the MAGA crowd. And then I don't think he'll do enough to kind of get himself isolated where all MAGA joins to go against Elon. But I think
but they'd bail on Elon over Trump.
Well, but I think that if Trump doesn't pick a side, so to speak, then I think ultimately what happens is it divides them. Well, and it could hurt them from an election. But look, we got a couple years before it matters, right? 100%. Before we get to midterms and that sort of thing. And so this will be long forgotten by then because the way this administration is going, there will be something new every other day.
And our society has the recollection skills of a goldfish.
Attention span and recollection
that's what I was looking for, yeah.
Of a gnat.
Yes. All right. I don't want to go long on our first episode back, or at least not too long. I saw a Newsweek...
Hold on. Actually, let's skip this. Let's not talk about this.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Only because speculation, hard to...
All right. All right.
But going back to Elon and Vivek, where do you come out with this whole immigration thing?
I mean, you know what? It's certainly not my area of expertise. As a chemical engineer, I can tell you when I graduated from college, the year I started school, everyone who graduated with a chemistry degree had 3 or more job offers upon graduation.
Chemical engineering degree, folks.
Chemical engineering degree from West Virginia University.
Because for the longest time, I was like, who the fuck is Kimmy?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, right. Chemical engineering. Yeah. When I graduated,
is she cute?
My God.
Big tits?
I need to keep talking so Steve won't. But it was when I got out. It was a tough market. It was 1 in 3 of us were getting jobs right out of college. Excuse me. A big reason why I went to grad school at Ohio State was because I didn't have a job. And when I don't have a job, and Steve knows me, he loves saying you got no job. But at the time I got no job, I went to grad school at Ohio State. So I understand people feeling threatened, like, there's people coming from India, from whatever. Now, realistically, they're probably coming from India, China, wherever, going to American colleges and then staying here with these visas. And these visas do give a level of control over the people who take these jobs that is frankly tyrannical. And I will tell you from personal experience, when I was in grad school at Ohio State, I was in the pharmaceutical sciences program, and then getting a visa from China was tough. And my advisor, who was a shitbag of a human, would literally threaten Chinese students with, if you don't do what I want, I can revoke your visa, and then you're either working in a Chinese restaurant or getting shipped back to 1994 communist China, which was fucking terrifying. And these people had done so much. I mean, I was some fucking punk kid from Buffalo who got a chemistry degree and got a job, or got into school because of my SAT scores. My GRE scores. But these folks were literally like living in America. They had families in some cases. And if you don't live up to what your employer works, in the case I'm talking about, it was the lab, they could just go, okay, you can't stay here anymore. And that gives people like Vivek and Elon Musk tremendous ability, or people in those, hiring those people, tremendous ability to say, not only are you a highly qualified technical person, but if we don't renew your visa and you don't have another job in time, you're getting shipped back to wherever. And having seen people's lives get really manipulated by that infuriated me. I had a big reason why I left the lab I was in, or the lab left me, depending on whose story you want to take, was because I found that revolting, and they would do this shit to these Chinese graduate students, like I said, work in a restaurant, work for us, do what you want, or get shipped back to communist China. And I literally gave the double middle finger to my advisor and said, I'm an American with a chemistry degree, a chemical engineering degree. Fuck you, I'm getting a job. So I do see I've a very cynical look at these types of visas.
But you got a job.
I did. Yep.
And I wonder, right, what the job market is like, because there's such a need and a demand for STEM educated,
sure,
college, graduate level people, right? Like, is it, yes, a lot of the people going into these fields in the U.S. are Asian, Middle Eastern, and, everything in between, not American. And the few Americans that are going into it are mostly women, right? And so you've got all the white male fragility and victimhood, like, oh, we're not going to... Right. And I just wonder...
They took our jobs.
Right. But again, I'm in this world, right, with 3D printing and manufacturing and everything else, and there's not a lot of people who have this skill set from anywhere. Right? From the Middle East, from India, from like the specific skill sets and some of the stuff that we need, right? Like, you're a chemical engineer, but you're not a mechanical engineer with advanced engineering and computer, all that other stuff, right? Like, so I just have my thing is I have a hard time believing that there's just no jobs out there, and the few jobs that are out there are only going to students from abroad, right? So I think there's a bigger issue with we don't have enough American students that are going into these programs, learning and developing these skills. And so because we don't have enough of the needed supply here, Elon Musk and Vivek are saying, like, look, we got to go and get it from overseas. Now, Vivek went a little bit further and said, oh, well, American work ethic and blah, 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 blah. Like, now, I think what you could glean from that is that going into these STEM is hard, right? You're getting into engineering is hard if you don't have a brain for numbers, if you don't have that, and even if you if you don't, you're not willing to work for it. And even the people who do find the path of least resistance to success, and they're probably finding ways to go earn decent dollars out of these STEM without getting into the brass tacks of it. Right?
Sure. They'll get an engineering degree, and then they'll go get an MBA because they want to be business guy, which is nothing. There's nothing wrong with
it, right? But at the end of the day, we still need the people on the ground who can actually do the work in real time and not just in theory, or just not kind of do the work around it as the business administrative side. But we actually need people who are actual engineers who have the experience, who can actually work in some of these things. So I think that it's a multi-level, nuanced conversation that we need to be directing our kids into these fields, right, and motivating them to actually get out there and be the engineers in the field, right, across the board. Getting our boys back into this, black, white, whatever, right. Also keeping the girls involved, right, getting them all more focused on these STEM sort of areas, and then I think that would help balance these things out. But I also think that it would make sense to bring in minds from other parts of the world that have that have shown talent, right, that have shown skills and creativity that you need. You have controls over it. And then I think the other big part of the conversation is that we also have to get a handle on illegal immigration and what's happening at the southern border. And I think that those are different. The umbrella conversation is immigration, but those two issues are vastly different.
Well, and so you brought up DEI earlier and the fact that they want to chop that away. DEI,
they basically did.
Okay, but the whole argument against that is, I want a meritocracy. Well, if you want a meritocracy, then
look. The other issue thing with DEI is that DEI, you got to understand what it is. Right?
I'm saying that's the reaction to
diversity, equity, and inclusion really is how you work with different types of people, right? Like DEI education is like, look, here's the simplest way to put it. It's how most people can be less of an asshole around people who are different than them, right? DEI doesn't mean that they have to go out and hire this many black people or this many Asian people or this many women, right? We have to have these people, right? What it is, look, when you're doing your hiring, there are certain things that you are discounting, or there are certain things that you are holding against people that you shouldn't. It's not that, hey, go take this black person even though that they're less qualified than this white person. It's if you've got two people that are equally qualified, right, don't discount the black person because of their hair, right, because you don't like their hairstyle because it's in braids and on top of their head, right? It's if you've got a black woman and a white woman, or a black woman and a white male, and the black woman has the same qualifications and has a knockout interview, but you don't like the fact that her hair is braided a certain way or something along those lines, or she's got a funky name, right? Excluding her because of her name and her hair is problematic, right? Doesn't mean you have to hire her, but you can't exclude her for those reasons,
Look,
right?
I mean, you're preaching to the choir,
yes,
that.
Right? But, it's what it's interpreted as.
That's where I was going.
Right? Is basically a free pass affirmative action where it's just, you've got a DE. And that's why I was saying, like, look, having a VP C-suite level person that is in charge of DEI, right, is going to backfire because it's going to get turned against you. You've got to find a better way to include diversity, equity, and inclusion without putting a big fucking target on it. And they said, fuck me. I was a racist because I said this, and, well, here we are.
This brings us back, I think the last time we recorded, you and I think we're actually on the same page. We got into kind of a heated argument because when you try to say, if you don't vote for Kamala Harris, it's because you're racist, you're sexist, you're whatever. If you don't do this, it's because you're whatever ist you want to attach. That's a losing strategy to winning people over.
Yes.
Now, does racism and sexism exist?
Yes.
100%. Okay. And that's where I think you and I were going off track last time, and it was 3 or 4 weeks ago. But again, using that as a bully pulpit is a losing strategy. Mm-hmm. Having said that, if you're anti, whatever, I forget what the visa's called. H1N? H1N?
No, I'm pretty sure that's a virus.
That it is. Okay.
H1B1 staff.
There we go. That's better. H1N is
fucking bird
virus.
flu.
It is. Is it bird flu or is it swine? It's a flu. It's a virus. Yes. Anyway. So going against that, if you're saying, we can't have this. This isn't America first. Well, are you America first or are you meritocracy first? Shouldn't Americans be stepping up and saying, hey, we're in America. We had, clean water if we're in suburbs. And a lot of people come from India are dealing with a whole lot of shit that we don't have to deal with literally and figuratively. And, hey, you literally, this is, when you use the word white privilege, people lose their mind.
If it's truly about a meritocracy, then you almost have to take the actual engagement with the human out of it, right? Like let's look at your qualifications, things that you've done. If it's engineering, what have you built, designed, fixed, figured out, whatever. And then you have some sort of interview where you're behind a curtain, you can't see the other person, right? If you truly want to make it fully we're just hiring you based off of what you bring to the table, and we can't bring your, looks into it.
Right.
But it's virtually impossible, right? And we're a very diverse culture. Now, MAGA's also mad about the diversity, right? Because you've got a number of people in that camp who are saying diversity isn't our biggest strength, and we don't need we need less diversity, and we need more, and if you come here,
more what? White nationalism?
Right? Well, No, that's not what they're saying. What they're saying is we all need to. Some of them are, but I think a small percentage. For the most part, what they're saying is, everyone, if you're in America, we all need to assimilate, right? And my question is, well, assimilate to what, right? I mean, that becomes, because America is so diverse, not only from a racial standpoint, but even amongst white Americans, right? Depending on what type of white person you are, right? Like your values, culture, right? Like they all vary a little bit in some way, shape, and form. Right, white people from the South and white people from the Northeast are real different. So, what are we assimilating to, right? What do and I think that's where a lot of immigrants actually kind of get in trouble, because they just kind of well, this is what these white people act like, so we're going to act like them, right? And then they don't necessarily when they take that particular setup, right, and they take it on the road elsewhere, and it's just they're not like the white people here. And they still find themselves ostracized. They're like, what the fuck, right? Like, it's just look, it's a no-win for you because your skin is brown and there's going to be some version of a white person that doesn't like you, right? So you might as well just be yourself, right? Hold on to your culture, your values to a certain degree. Respect our rule of law and the various ways we do things, but be true to who you are. That's probably the best way to go. And there's just kind of pushback against even that to... You just need to assimilate to basically conservative white culture, whatever that means, however that is defined by the person saying it.
This could get me down a whole bunch of side paths, and I'd love to actually go down them at some point, but I do want to talk sports a bit.
Yeah,
and so we started talking about the New Orleans terrorist attack, and hopefully we leave here and we go watch Notre Dame and Georgia, which was delayed because of that. But the college football playoffs have been really interesting. How's that for a segue? But
it's fucking brutal.
It was terrible. It was awful.
There were so many different ways you could have done that better.
Thank you. Okay. But we're moving past it. College football. Ohio State has been rolling.
You literally said, we started with a terrorist attack. College football has been weird.
I feel like the whole CNN playing the Applebee's commercial after the moment of silence. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
So
with
if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you don't, you're probably a better person than me. But CNN literally transitioned from the silence of the streets of Ukraine right after the attack to an Applebee's commercial with a country song. So it was like dead silence except for alarms, and then with a little bit of chicken
any
fry.
Applebee's commercial, first of all, right? Is not a good transition, really, out of anything,
especially out of war. Right. So I did not as bad as that. But anyway, college football playoffs. Ohio State is rolling.
So, so going through the college football playoff, there was a lot of angst because all your SEC fans were like, "Oh, we need more SEC teams, and the SEC is so good, and blah blah blah, strength of schedule, yada yada yada." And the Big Ten is 4-1 this bowl season against the SEC. Ohio State rolls Tennessee. Illinois beats South Carolina.
Michigan beats Alabama.
Yeah, Michigan beats Alabama, although not in the college football playoff, but still.
But they did it with. They looked like the bigger, more physical, dominant team. I bet against Michigan. I laid the fucking 14 points, so I sold my soul and I got kicked in the balls like I deserved.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think a lot of people bet on Alabama to win that game. I think people underestimated Michigan's defense. But at the end of the day, look, what you have is the parity that the SEC never wanted, right? And it's because of the transfer portal. It's because of NIL. You've got so much talent that is now very spread out everywhere except Columbus, Ohio, because they paid the most. But nonetheless, like, you've got people who were able to either stay closer to home, or kids who were able to, who decided to stay in school another year to continue to develop. And they didn't feel pressured to go to the NFL because they had some financial security in staying and knowing that, if I get hurt, like, I'm not completely assed out of this thing. And now, look, you have to remember, like, you've got a few kids in college football who are making a fuck ton of money, but most of these kids aren't making $1 million or, $100,000 a quarter, right? Like, right. It's $25,000, it's $10,000, it's maybe $50,000, which to a college kid, that is,
fortune.
Most adults, that's good money, but it's not like I can retire forever money, but it gives the kids better options, right? And kids who may be able to go to the NFL, and if they go this year, they'll be a third or fourth pick, but if they stay and develop, right, then they could jump into the first or the second round. So these kids are choosing to stay longer, right? You go through and you look at Ohio State's defense yesterday, and it was fifth-year senior, fifth-year senior, fifth-year senior, fifth-year senior, fifth-year, like literally right. 9 5-year seniors, right? And then there were like 2 transfers, right?
But I want to not push back. I'm actually totally agreeing with you. The transfer portal also matters tremendously, because if you went, and we saw it in the quarterback shuffle between Joe Burrow and Justin Fields and all that, it was like you went to the school, you expected to have a chance to be a starter. In our days, if you wanted to transfer to a Division I school, you were sitting out a year, which means you're irrelevant for a year.
And that's
really important.
Right? It's out. Sorry, because no, it's fine. I mean, like, look, my experience at UMass is good. It's just that the poor kids, like, the last 10 years, I've had terrible experiences. But
my point is that you get a chance to stay in the game and showcase your talents.
Yeah, and now a lot of people are upset, right? Like, your old school people are just like, oh, you should stay and earn. It's just like, screw that, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're good enough, if you're even close to good enough to go to the NFL, you do everything it takes to go get to the NFL, right? If let's say you got a chance, you got an opportunity to be a world-renowned doctor or whatever, right? Like, and you're at one unit, like you're in undergrad, right? If you feel that undergrad program isn't the right program to get you to where you want to be, you may opt to transfer to go into a better program that is going to get you into the medical school that you need to get into the field that you want to get into. Right? Professionally, people do this all the time. People just are mad because of the kids who are doing it and what they're going to go do, because it's sports, because it's football, because the majority of the athletes are black, right? Like, these are all the issues why people are really upset about the transfer portal and NIL, if we're just being honest.
Sure. Right? And I want to say this, because one of the reasons I bet against Michigan is I know that they had 2 or 3 of their defensive starters that sat out the game. And people get upset about that, saying, well, it's your bowl game, you should do this. And I was like, I get what you're saying. As a fan, I want the team that I cheer for to do the best they can. And yes, I want this guy who's going to be an NFL first-round pick to go out there and win a bowl game for me. Yeah, I want that as a fan. If I'm in his shoes, and it's like, okay, I'm auditioning for a chance to sign a $10 million check. And the analogy I want to use is me as a chemical engineer. If I was graduating from WVU with a chemistry degree, and they said, okay, you can take one more test, and if you do great on this test, it could really help you. But if it doesn't go great, it could really cost you. But if you stay where you're at, you're guaranteed this. I'd be an idiot to take that test.
Yeah.
And the difference is, taking that test, I'm not going to get my leg chopped out from under me. I'm not going to see my draft status drop 4 rounds and literally cost me millions of dollars. So, fine, I get the whole, I'm proud of this team, and if I was there, I would blah, 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 do your thing. But if you're in that kid's situation, they're doing the smart thing for themselves.
Look,
That's just my point.
the reality is, I think, I definitely, you don't see many kids opting out of the college football playoff, right?
But not in the playoff, right?
Right, and for good reason, right? Because, like, I mean, those games mean something. NFL scouts want to see, like, hey, these games have a lot of meaning,
Sure,
a lot of value. How do you handle playoff pressure situations?
Sure.
Like, this could absolutely raise your draft stock, and sitting out will absolutely hurt your draft stock, right?
Yep.
The bowl games, the fucking Pop-Tart Bowl, right. As much as I love it, and I really just love it for the Pop-Tarts.
You love Pop-Tarts.
Like, that would have been my goal in college. Like, look, guys, we need to go 7-4. Here's why. We got to get in the Pop-Tart Bowl. Okay? Like, I would actually probably look at what schools, what conferences go to the Pop-Tart Bowl. I'm transferring to a school that's got a chance to go. We can't be too good and skip the Pop-Tart Bowl. I need to go to someone who's going to go 7-4 so I can get a fucking...
You're only saying this because there isn't a Little Debbie's Bowl, by the way.
Yes.
Or is there?
Well, I mean, let me tell you, because of the transfer portal... One year I'm playing at a school going to the Pop-Tart Bowl. The next year I'm transferring to a school that's playing in the Little Debbie Bowl, right? And my fat ass is going to enjoy all of it. I'd be a D lineman by the time I was done. But, I mean, but my whole point is that, yes, the SEC was very dominant for a long time, and they're hanging on to that. Good luck, right? Because the reality is that the playing field is mad as middle-aged white guy wants to be about it. The playing field is now very level, right? And you've got Ohio State, which is the one outlier, right? Because, like, people don't realize how much money Ohio State not only makes and spends. It's absurd. Think about this. Everyone thinks about Notre Dame and their NBC and how much money they... Do you realize they aren't even... They're Notre Dame, I think... makes $100 million less than Ohio State when it comes to sports.
All right. I mean, I don't have...
I mean, I actually looked at the numbers, right?
I'm sure. Let
me tell you this. Last year, Ohio State did $225 million in revenue. In sports.
Is that just television and ticket sales?
It's their sports department. That's the money that they brought in, right? Like, so that's all of it, right? Like, Notre Dame did like $60 million, right? Like, it's insane, right? And $60 million is a lot of fucking money, right? For college fucking sports.
Yeah. Well, right. I mean, when I was in college, you would go to a bowl game, and the bowl game would bring $3 million into the school, and it was like, okay, we got to do this because it's $3 million for going to the Sugar Bowl. $200 million is a bit more than that. All right, we got to wrap this up. I want to talk NFL MVP for a minute because I obviously have a bias. You and I have traded some text messages about this, but you're voting for NFL MVP right now. Who you got?
Josh Allen.
I want that to be the case. Lamar's numbers are so ridiculous.
I mean,
and Saquon Barkley's numbers are so ridiculous. And Steve, let me keep rolling for a second because we're now talking about 3 phenomenal single season performances by 3 phenomenally talented athletes, and putting one over the rest is not shitting on the other 2. And when you get in these, you spend more time on X, I spend more time on Facebook. I don't know which is worse. I think X is probably worse. But, all these people are like trashing one or the other. It's like all 3 of these guys had storybook seasons. I want Josh Allen to win it. Throwing the ball back to you.
I'm kind of neutral on it. And in terms of who went, like I'm looking at it objectively. Let me go back. I messed up. Notre Dame, their revenue number was $215 million. Ohio State was $280 million. Sorry.
280?
$280 million. Notre Dame was $215.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
I had a lot of different numbers in my head. My bad. But
devotion and accuracy are respected.
But Ohio State's still a lot more than Notre Dame. Fuck you, Notre Dame. Any chance I get. But here's the deal. I think when you look at it, just watching the games, right? I watch a lot of football, Sunday ticket, watch as many games as I can. Josh Allen is just, if you take Josh Allen away from the Bills, they cannot win football games.
You're 100% correct.
If you take Lamar away, the defense is pretty good. You still got Derrick Henry.
Yep.
You get a pretty decent backup in there, and you're at least a 8-9 team, right? 9-8 team. You may still be able to kind of work your way into the playoffs, maybe, right? You take Josh Allen away from the Bills,
they're 5-12.
and I don't know. I just think it's Josh Allen. I've already seen Lamar win too.
I think that plays a role.
Here's the thing, though. Lamar's numbers are absurd.
They are insane.
And, because you got people who are out there still calling Lamar Jackson a running back. I'm like, he threw for fucking just
4,
under 4,000 yards. Right? Now, other people will be like, well, what about Joe Burrow? And I'm like, look, his numbers are insane.
Also stupid, yes.
He's got more passing yards than both Lamar Allen and Josh Jackson. But, listen, his team barely...
You said Lamar Allen and Josh Jackson.
Josh
Allen and Lamar Jackson, yes.
Here's the thing, though. Joey, love you, right? Always have a place in my heart because your time in the Buckeyes, and I thought what you did at LSU was phenomenal. Great. I'm glad what you're doing down in Cincinnati. But your team may not make the playoffs.
Right.
Point blank. Steelers beat you on Saturday. You're not going to the playoffs. You're not the MVP. Right? MVP is getting his team into the playoffs in a top 3 seed. Right? And so I think
that's why Lamar won last year, is he was the number 1 seed in the AFC.
Yeah,
and Josh Allen has some great numbers, but turned it over more.
Right, and Lamar's numbers weren't as gaudy last year, but I mean, he was just clearing away the whole reason that team was going. Right, this year he's got Derrick Henry, and now his numbers are just absurd, and you can make an argument he's a big part of the engine.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? But Josh Allen is the transmission. Josh Allen is the battery. He's the alternator.
He's the windshield wiper fluid.
Right. I mean, he's everything that makes the car go. And so I just think that this year it's pretty clearing away Josh Allen.
I will take that as a great way to close out.
And I just look, because they're not going to give it to a running back, right? Unless a running back runs for fucking 3,000 yards, breaks Barry Sanders' record, then it's not going to happen, right? So, or not Barry Sanders, I'm sorry, Eric Dickerson,
yeah,
because Barry Sanders has it in college.
Yes,
but who's your coach of the year?
Oh, I think this is kind of a setup, but I'm going to go with it. I would have to give a lot of credit to Mike Tomlin, just because the Steelers coming into the season were not particularly hyped. He dealt with a quarterback situation, which coaches always struggle with. Justin Fields was 4-2 and got benched, and yet he still managed the team chemistry, and they are 1 game away from winning the
it's
NFC
Kevin O'Connell.
North.
It's Kevin O'Connell from Minnesota.
Oh, geez. Okay,
It's Kevin O'Connell.
I didn't know who Minnesota's head coach was.
Right.
I just know that Sam Darnold is resurrected his career.
Right.
Someone said to me the other day, like, "What's that guy done?" I'm like, "Won 14 games this year, or 13, whatever it is."
Right. I mean, they're 14-2. He's doing it with Sam Darnold, right? Who could arguably get the comeback player of the year.
I think that's a pretty good.
They did it after losing Kirk Cousins, right? Now, you could say, oh, well, he blew out his Achilles.
Kurt.
But, I mean, you get rid of, either way, you remove Kirk Cousins, who, a lot of people were just like, what are they going to do? You drafted J.J. McCarthy. He gets hurt. So you have to start your backup. And then with your backup, who turns out to end up being a guy who was better than the guy that you got rid of, who just got paid, $40 million a year to go to Atlanta. You look at the way that defense is playing with Brian Flores as defensive coordinator. I just think it's got to be Kevin O'Connell.
No, that's a good point. In fact, Minnesota's defense is so underrated I had them on my fantasy team. Which one?
Understand this. I am livid about that. You know why? Because Brian Flores was on the Steelers staff last year, and we let him go and kept fucking Terrell Austin. Like, imagine if I've got Brian Flores running a defense with T.J. Watt, right, and Landon Roberts, and Patrick Queen, and Alex Highsmith, and Minka Fitzpatrick, who that may be why we didn't keep him, because Brian Flores and Minka Fitzpatrick didn't get along in Miami, and so they shipped him off. But I'm just saying, give me a more mature Brian Flores as my defensive coordinator with Mike Tomlin as the head coach. I guarantee you the Steelers win the division going away this year, right, without this bullshit that we're doing. Because Terrell Austin is not a good defensive coordinator. There's a reason he only lasted a year in Cincinnati. There's a reason he got booted out of fucking Detroit. I don't know why Mike Tomlin kept him, but either way, Coach of the Year, Kevin O'Connell.
Let's.
I played you, fam. I played you. You thought I was going with my T.
I did. No, you
I
did.
set you up.
You did. And I made my case, and I don't think my case was bad. But
look. I'm a Steeler fan, and I love. Listen,
again, I thought that was putting it on a T.
But I mean, the reality is, like last year we had Kenny Pickett. I would argue that Mike Tomlin did a better coaching job last year with Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph playing quarterback than this year with
Russell Wilson
with a Super Bowl MVP winning quarterback and Justin Fields, who's a number 1 draft pick and really talented kid. Both were kind of left for dead, but both pretty good. But we're probably going to end up with the same record or one more win than we had last year. Which, if we get that one more win, that puts my season prediction dead on.
How'd you do on the prediction of the Bills season? I think you had us at 9-8.
No, I didn't. No.
It was bad.
I wasn't. I think I had you at like 10 wins.
Okay.
I think I had you at 10 wins. How many wins you got? 14, 13?
It's 13 now.
Yeah.
14 if we beat the
right. Because your defense
Patriots.
is better than I thought it would be. I thought your defense would fall off a lot more.
Well, all right, and we can. You know what? Let's keep this going. But we're about to go watch Notre Dame and Georgia. So thanks for listening. We are at Whiskey Congress on Instagram and X, and we're done.